which sets us up well for the next session, something I've been excited about because we live in an age of social media. And there are certain companies that really have that mantle, have that responsibility, but are doing it at a scale that has never been imagined before. Our next session is called AI for India, solving today, shaping tomorrow. AI isn't just reshaping industries, it's solving real-world challenges and driving economic growth. In this session, we will explore the delicate balance of innovation, ethics, and opportunity to shape India's AI-powered future. Can we have a warm round of applause as I welcome my guest for the next session, Sandhya Devanathan, Vice President and Head, India at Meta. A huge round of applause, please. Sandhya, it's a packed room, which is a good sign. And, you know, even if I had to go to the audience for a quick dipstick survey, each and every person in this room probably and actually definitely uses one of the platforms that you represent. WhatsApp users, Instagram users, Facebook. Yes, Facebook still operates. And then everything that Meta and Mr. Zuckerberg and their team is doing to really usher us into the next era, which is all about AI. And that's what our conference is about as well, Sandhya. So let's talk about AI right up. Meta AI. I know somewhere in the back I'm one of the first users of the Meta Ray-Bans, and they seem really cool because I feel like Facebook cracked the code over there. But most importantly, the amount of data that everyone's been talking about in the previous sessions honestly pales in comparison to what Meta across its platforms can actually work on with its LLMs. And we'll talk about models like Llama 1, 2, and 3. We'll talk about Meta AI and the amazing inputs and the kind of data you guys have. Tell us a little bit more about Meta AI and its recent launch in India.
Thank you so much for having me here, Ayush. And it is a full room. And I was watching the previous session. That seemed like, firstly, this session I missed, but the session before that where we had artists come and talk about all that they were doing with Gen AI. And I think it's an exciting world we live in, right? So, and Meta AI really very much, is a part of that. For us, I think before I talk about Meta AI, I want to talk about, the company itself. And we updated our mission recently, and we talked about how we're about human connection and the technology that enables it. And if you see Meta AI, that is really plays into the heart of that mission, right? Which is, for Mark and for the rest of us in the company, Meta AI is really about enabling and democratizing access to AI to the billions of people who use our platform. And since we've launched Meta AI in India, what we've seen is, this explosion of usage, hundreds of millions of queries on Meta AI. In fact, we announced that we have around 500 million people using Meta AI, and India is the biggest country for Meta AI as well. So Indians, not just the ones in urban metros, but Indians across the country are finding use from Meta AI. So we're learning from it. We hope to make it stronger, better. So it's an exciting time.
Yes, absolutely. And we talk about India and Bharat, and with 500 million users using Meta AI across your platforms, what's fascinating is, and something I want to understand, from a journalistic perspective is, how much of that data and, how much does, or let's place it simply for everyone, I don't want to get all geeky on this, how much does Menlo Park empathize with that 500 million users worth of data and the diversity of it? How much does it feed into the mothership?
So Meta AI is based off of our Llama models. And Llama models are trained on data. Most of the data it's trained on is what's publicly available, right? Very little is proprietary. So I think what we're seeing on Meta AI, if you're a user that uses Meta AI, you can ask for, your history to be, erased, like the questions and stuff like that. But you can also, it learns as you ask it questions, and it becomes better in a session in terms of the responses it provides. So you give the feedback, and if, the responses are inappropriate, for example, because no AI model is perfect, what we do then is that we review it and see whether it meets our community guidelines or not, and we try and make the model better, more useful. So the idea really with Meta AI is how can we build something that people trust and that is useful for people using our platforms.
And most importantly, when you're talking about hardware devices like the Ray-Ban Metas I was talking about. For all of you all wondering, they're those, Ray-Ban sunglasses, which seem minimal or stealth in terms of technology, but they do a fair bit. You can communicate with Meta AI, get all sorts of answers. You can take photos. I use them as a substitute to AirPods or TWS earbuds because they're fantastic when it comes to sound.
Yeah, I love my Meta. I did not pay him to say this. He's really using Meta Ray-Bans.
I use them. I purchased them of my own hard-earned money. But there are questions there, right? Because the amount that those glasses are, of course, there is a privacy guard with the light that comes on every time I'm recording you guys. But there are questions there, right, which come about in terms of privacy and security. And I'm guessing as you scale up the AI mission, and Facebook does this globally, not just in India or Asia, that these must be serious considerations. Because if that goes wrong, companies have tried that before, and it's not always worked out.
Absolutely. Look, I think, which is why you cannot take pictures without that light going off, right? Like if the light goes off, you can't take those pictures, nor can you take a video. So when we build products today, and it's not just, for Meta Ray-Bans, but also for every product that we build across our platforms, we go through something that's pretty extensive called a privacy review. There's a whole organization and a team that looks at how we're looking at privacy first in the products that we build, and it's a commitment that we take pretty seriously. And that's something that we'll continue to endeavor to do.
But
look, it's
no, please.
It's an emerging technology, so, we're also learning, and, what you see, which you talked about, which is this light coming on that tells the other person, there's something going on with those glasses, are just a way in which we've sort of thought about privacy and how that comes to life with our Meta Ray-Bans.
Here, all of us covering technology spoke so long, waxing lyrical about the opportunity that came with Meta AI. But I must say this very honestly and candidly, it seems like it's still work in progress. Do you think that to some extent, globally, while the promise of Facebook and Meta's social media platforms is so much, that this could have been done more effectively and at a larger scale, perhaps?
Look, all Gen AI models, not just Meta AI, right, which is based off Llama, all of them are works in progress, right? This is a recent technology, and as with any new technology, it's never going to be picture perfect, right? And I think I want to take a minute to talk about, because I think you talked a lot about our responsibility as a company, and I want to talk about how we're thinking about, as we build these large language models. Mark has talked about all the investments we're making in LLMs. We've made significant commitments around the infrastructure builds that we're doing to support this. So I want to talk about two things. One, about our whole philosophy of open sourcing this technology. So if you see Llama, all the models of Llama are open sourced. And why? Because we believe that with this kind of technology, open sourcing it makes for a much more useful, right? So people are all building on it. You build a lot of trust, and you build scale and robustness as you open source, because it's not just you building, it's a whole community of developers that are building to make systems more secure, more robust, and more future-proof, because the whole ecosystem is building on it. And what you've seen as a result is that with Llama, for example, in India, Sarvam has built the first ever Hindi Llama, Hindi large language model based off our Llama 2 model. Now they've done something on audio with Llama 3. So I think those kind of things become possible when you open source it, and everyone is building off of it and making it stronger. What we also do when we build our systems, whether it's true for Meta AI or it's true for both Meta AI and for Llama models that we built, is that we've done something called red teaming, where we have internal and external experts that actually try to post threats on the system and then see what kind of responses the models give, and then close those loopholes, right? It's not perfect, but we take that super seriously. That's where we invest a lot of our time and money in. We looked at responses on Meta AI and fine-tuned a lot of those. We have large teams. And the last two things I'll say is this: both at a prompt and a response level on Meta AI today, what we do is that if we think this is either an inappropriate question or not something that should be asked, we don't even take the prompt, or if we take the prompt and there's a response, we cut that response. Yeah. So we've done all of that. But look, this is not something we can do on our own. Like I said, Gen AI is relatively new. It's not perfect. So this time, we've also tied up with industry associations. You had the head of IBM earlier. We launched an international AI alliance with IBM, where we want to build this responsibly across organizations, leaders, developers.
Fair enough, and I think all of us in the audience appreciate that. It is an emerging technology, but you touched upon the open source nature of the way Meta approaches this, which is interesting, because another thing that comes with that democratic, inclusive sort of AI revolution, and I'd imagine would require interoperability, would require that other companies within the AI ecosystem also collaborate. For instance, and I can say this, I can use some brand names here, a company like Apple, which seems to be closed as an ecosystem, largely operates very well, known for their ecosystem play, even with their real foray into applied intelligence or artificial intelligence, the big launch of Apple Intelligence came with an interesting feature, opening up to OpenAI and ChatGPT. With all the privacy and security safeguards, we're waiting for it in the next iOS. But why haven't we seen more of these sort of announcements coming in from Meta HQ and also over here?
In fact, Llama can be used by anyone, so
Agreed.
it is open sourced, right?
But does it need an active partnerships push?
No, in fact, so I would say, again, when I look at Llama and what we've seen multiple versions of Llama now. We've open sourced all of them. And what you see in India, again, I want to talk about those partnerships.
Yeah.
I talked about Sarvam, which is building off of Llama. There is Odia Gen, which is also something, if you think about the language diversity of the country, right? 22 languages, 700 dialects. You're thinking about solutions that need to scale across. It's a massive opportunity, right? For companies that get it, that innovate on AI and sort of help the country leapfrog. And for that, you need an affordable solution. And that's where Llama comes in as well, right? Because it's open sourced, it's free, you download it, and the data is yours, you're working with that in a secure manner. So we've done partnerships there. I talked, backstage about what we're seeing with Kisan AI.
Yes.
Vadvani Labs, in fact, they're a Llama grant recipient for this year, globally, one of the 3 companies. They're doing some incredible work in the field of education, as is, Ariban. So there's tons of examples of incredible companies that are building off of Llama, and it's all possible because that's open sourced, and they're, sort of making it tailor-made for their needs and what the audiences they want to serve or the problems they want to solve.
Yeah.
Equally, enterprises. So we work with a lot of large enterprises because you talked about Apple. I'll talk about, a lot of the large Indian companies, Dream11, InfoEdge. All of them are building off of Llama as well. And they're seeing massive use cases like productivity gains, streamlining systems, or just innovating faster. So I'd like to believe, given India is one of the largest markets globally for us when it comes to Llama downloads, that developers and, enterprises are finding a lot of use in it. I know you were there for our Meta AI Day. You'd have seen the excitement. We had around 1,600 developers build on a hackathon, over a weekend, and we had, a room full of people wanting to learn about Llama and how they can use it.
One thing I haven't heard enough today, maybe in some of the coffee table conversations, has been the chatter about agentic AI.
Yes. You haven't heard enough about it.
I haven't heard enough about it at this conference, so I must bring it up with one of our top guests for the evening. And I want to talk to you about it in a use case like India, because this is a market you understand really well. The detractors, the critics will always say the traditional applications of AI which work in the US or the West won't necessarily work here in India. But agentic AI might find a use case which could really help us leapfrog innovation in India. Do you think that's the case? If you could explain to us a little bit more about your take on agentic AI and how does it work?
So I'll talk a little bit about how we're thinking about AI overall, right? I talked about Meta AI and how that's a big part of how we think we'll democratize access to AI for people. What we've also been focused a lot on is I'm guessing a lot of you in the room and those who are, streaming and watching this live are probably users of WhatsApp. And what you'd have seen, in the last year or two is just an explosion of chatbots on WhatsApp, right? And you'd have, hopefully you'd have found it getting better, smarter, faster in terms of what you can do. So I'll give you an example. Indigo has an AI chatbot, and, somebody from Menlo Park had come down, was trying really hard to, web check-in, didn't work, got his boarding pass on the chatbot in like seconds, right? And that's what what, and it was very intuitive. So when we think about us, we can probably do the 10 steps of a chatbot, download an app, whatever else. But when you think across the country, if it becomes really intuitive and it's not something you need to teach people or skill people on, the amount of time that it frees up and the productivity gains that you'll see are just amazing. And those are the kinds of experiences we're working with multiple companies and our ecosystem partners on. I want to take it one step further because Mark has sort of also laid out his vision for what he sees on our platform, and we're already testing this with companies in India, which is really this vision of every company or every small business having an agent that helps them respond very quickly. So if there's a customer that's messaged you, but you don't have the bandwidth to handle it, and you're a small business and you're out, getting produce for the day, you've lost the sale, right? But with an agent that responds on your behalf, that has your voice, that learns from you, that's not a lost sale anymore. So we see a future in which, at least on our platforms, we give further access. Again, this is about democratizing AI, access to tools like AI agents on our platform, which are free, which you can use, right? To sort of learn from how you behave and, answer on your behalf. I see it already, being used right now, like I said, for customer service, for customer acquisition, for customer engagement, and we're seeing it with creators as well. So we just launched something called, Character AI for creators, and that's also been, that's still, test and learn phase.
We're all waiting now. We have enough time to get into the creator economy. So everyone who wants to be an influencer, creator, become the next big thing in India, stay tuned. But since you are talking about what, Mark's view has been on some of these projects, and also what Silicon Valley generally is talking about, artificial general intelligence. That was the conversation a few months ago in AI Mansa years. Artificial general intelligence, and I'm just going to say this at the cost of sounding naive, is when AI systems, in simple English, get as smart as human beings. But now the conversation, the folks at NVIDIA and the lovely folks in Cerebral Valley and Sam Altman are all talking about is artificial super intelligence. When AI becomes much smarter than all of us sitting in this room, maybe more than the combined smartness that we all have. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sandhya. How do you see this, especially since you understand a market like India, with the plethora of opinions, perspectives, beliefs, that diversity, and then if you're feeding off those data sets to come up with something, if it's achieved, called ASI, artificial super intelligence, does that become a little bit, if you just step back and forget about Meta for a minute, does that become a little worrying then?
I go back to my colleague Jan, who I believe you met.
Was here just a few.
Yes, and who talks about,
who's the godfather of AI.
Who's the godfather of AI. He's a chief AI scientist. And I had the, a privilege of spending a better part of a week with him when he was here. And I think we go back to what he's talking about, which is, the capabilities that AI has today don't match the intelligence of a cat. I think that's the line, or, a 5-year-old child, right? Like he talks about how far away we are in terms of that evolution. We're all trying to travel towards, AGI, but at this point, AI is not there. But what AI can do is really powerful even today, right? So I'll give you an example. So we have, we've launched Gen AI, tools on our platform for advertisers and for businesses. And what we've seen is small businesses can actually create, if you're a small business, you don't have the resources to put up, spending lakhs putting up a web page, spending lakhs doing creatives. What we're seeing there is that they're actually doing that using tools on our platform. And I think, found that it saves them around 4 hours a week, right? We've had around 15 million creatives in 1 month, which 1 million businesses have used using Gen AI. Now, what that is that it is actually productivity gains that you're seeing here and now. It is time that is getting freed up to do everything else. So I would say, the worry about ASI for me is sort of eclipsed by the opportunity that I see in the here and now. And I do think, to your point, governments, the ecosystem, all of us need to work together to make sure we put guardrails in, right? So be it, the standards that we set or, regulations that come in, all of that, this is like a team effort. This is not something that any one company can do or can take ownership of. It has to be multidisciplinary and functional. Lots of people have to come in, on and have, and build the AI ecosystem. And they are.
Super. Now we're going to switch gears and move to social media. There's a lot of AI in social media as well. More importantly, the previous session you were talking about where we spoke about artists and their work, also they did allude to the point that a lot of them are doing this on Instagram. And more importantly, the algorithm and the rules and the standards are such, which is refreshing to see that, when it is AI generated, that label exists, that sort of transparency exists. But going forward, you see these virtual influencers, you see a lot of people doing all sorts of stuff in the creator economy. How do you see it shaping up in India, right? Have we reached that saturation point now on Instagram Reels? Or is there perhaps an evolution? Because I know Instagram Reels really picked up in India much before it did in the rest of the world. So I think that importance needs to be given to India, of course. But do you think we're sort of saturated? We've reached that titration point with Instagram and Reels in India?
No, absolutely not. I can pretty confidently say that. In fact, we're buoyed by the engagement we see. We love the work that creators are doing on Instagram. I think a lot of cultural trends are being, set on Instagram. So, in fact, if anything, we're seeing increasing sort of growth. India continues to remain one of the most important markets for Meta, for Instagram, and for Reels. I was just at Menlo Park 3 weeks ago, and one of the things pretty much on everyone's lips was around how important India is and the kind of lessons and the trends we are picking up from India that we're then using for the rest of the world. And Instagram definitely was talked about a lot, as was WhatsApp and Facebook. But I will say this, right? If you see today on Instagram, 50% of the content that you see on Instagram is referred by AI, right? Recommended content by AI. So you are seeing AI come into play in terms of what we show up to people and what they see. And what we're also seeing is creators experiment with our AI creative tools for AI, for our Gen AI tools, but they're also going to be using chatbots that are in their voice. So think about if you're a creator and you have 5 million followers, right? You can't be responding individually to every one of them.
Yes.
But you don't want to just hand over control to some AI that doesn't have your voice, right? So imagine a future where it still is personal, but you're able to say, like, you train it once and it's your assistant that speaks in your voice and that says a thank you to a nice comment or a compliment, because you want your audience also to feel engaged, but you want it to be personal. So those are the kind of things that we are thinking about.
While I have been asking all these tough questions, I must say, and it's great in terms of culture, the way Adam Mosseri, the head at Instagram, and Mark Zuckerberg do take to these social media platforms and talk to us in the community
directly.
And the creator community. So when people leave a comment on Adam's explainers nowadays saying, the algorithm is broken, we aren't growing, we have been shadow banned.
You have to ask Adam that, not me.
Okay, when they leave that feedback to Meta India's team, how do you respond to that? Because so many creators will be watching saying, yeah, growth has stopped over here. How do we do this?
So I actually disagree with what you're saying, because I think since, for the last 2 years, for example, we launched something called Made on Reels, which was the first attempt to get creators to connect with brands, large and small, across the country. It was really successful because we were able to do a lot of matchmaking for creators and brands because we work with all of them, right? Of course, you can talk about the scale, because if you say tens of millions of creators, obviously we weren't able to do that with all of them. We also launched our Instagram marketplace, where, creator marketplace, where again, through the use of technology, we're trying to connect creators with brands so we help them monetize, right? When it comes to things specifically like feedback, we often do roundtables, we do product immersions, we listen to creators quite seriously. And like I said, Instagram is a priority market is India, priority country is India. So we take that feedback really, really seriously, and we constantly build. So in fact, a lot of the safety tools that we built for creators, right, which helps them sort of contain trolling and stuff like that, has come from feedback that's come from creators, right? It's not something we built on our own. So we take user feedback very seriously, and especially creator feedback. So if you're a creator that's listening, please know that we do take your feedback very, very seriously, even if you're not able to respond to you individually.
We appreciate that. But, you know, it's interesting to see how the 9:16, the vertical video, what we call reels, and it's interesting, in a country like India, when you talk about photocopying, it becomes Xerox. When you talk about mineral water, it becomes one particular brand. Similarly, vertical content existed all along, but it's become Instagram reels. We see that there was a big push, of course, from the fact that TikTok was banned here in India, and we saw a lot of growth here for Instagram and Reels. But then now there's YouTube as well that has come up with Shorts. What I want to understand is the one thing as a creator that I don't really get is that while YouTube has really cracked the monetization aspect of it, there were murmurs and a start in terms of monetization on Meta platforms and Instagram. But for now, it's not necessarily materialized. For someone to make it their mainstay, their main career, I think collaborations work for a lot of creators on the Meta side of things, but it's not monetization the way YouTube approaches it.
Yeah, it's different from YouTube, of course, but we're a different platform, right? So I do feel like we help creators monetize, and we're always experimenting with new ways to make sure that they are able to, monetize on our platforms or, find value from our platforms, and that remains an endeavor.
Okay. Now, what's interesting is that there's a lot of interesting partnerships that are actually working out. Like I said, on the AI side, maybe not, that we didn't know of until our conversation, but on the social media side, we see interesting things now, whereas you have Spotify for music. Now on Meta platforms like Instagram, you can automatically add to your Spotify playlist. There's many synergies with Spotify Wrapped as well. Is that really the way forward to create? They have a Justice League approach versus, what DC and Marvel are doing. Is this the side of it? Spotify, Facebook joining hands. We're seeing Apple and OpenAI joining hands. Is this the way forward?
Look, I think we have partnerships across. So I'm not the expert to comment on Apple and OpenAI, but for a long time now we've had partnerships even on your Meta Ray-Bans. There's quite a lot of apps you can access and things like that. So it really depends on what we see emerging on our platform, right? And it's not just Spotify. We have other music partnerships too. So it's really about what people want on our platform. So on Instagram, music is consumed. People like to add music to their reels, to their stories, and that's really what we're enabling.
Why did we see the Meta AI launch in India so much later than the rest of the world? Also with Meta Ray-Bans for that matter. Nearly a year later or a few months later? Why didn't, if India is a key market, why didn't we get these products and services first?
We get a lot of products earlier. In fact, we innovate on a bunch of products. But I would say Meta AI came a little later than the other markets. But when it came, it was good. And you can see already the usage has sort of exploded, and you're seeing the numbers sort of shoot through the roof. I just want to sort of take a minute to talk about that. We had a team that came and did a deep dive and an immersion on how Meta AI is being used, because almost as quickly as we launched it, we saw Indians take to Meta AI and use it in ways that we didn't think was possible, and in places we didn't expect, right? So they went to a village outside of Varanasi, and what they found was this lady using Meta AI and asking questions on how to teach her son, how to help him in his homework and his schoolwork. Then we found somebody else who was sending a card to her sister for her birthday. So I think what we had imagined was that people would use prompts like imagine, right? Which are very our way of thinking of how people would have used the platform. What we found was just Indians were just innovating on Meta AI and using it very differently. So what it also told us was that we should get this right. So waiting and releasing it with all the testing done, the prompts and the guardrails put in was the right move. But once, people have started using Meta AI, you'll see a lot of action and a lot of, people working with Meta AI to make it stronger, at least from, our product team's side.
As consumers and as content creators, we're very greedy. And, we thought that Meta AI came a bit late to India, but what are your plans, especially with Meta AI in India? How are you going to scale this up, especially when the Googles and the Geminis and the OpenAIs and ChatGPTs and several other companies, big tech companies and AI startups are working in that space? How are we going to scale up Meta AI to make sure that you're ahead of the curve?
So I go back, right? I started with the mission of the company. It's really around enabling human connection and, and the technology, and underpinning that is the technology that enables that, right? And that's what we're focused on. And for us, when we think about Meta AI, it's really that, right? We have 3.2 billion counting people on our platform, actually a higher number now. But it's really around democratizing access to AI for all of them, right? You're not paying $20 a month to access AI. It's in your hands. You can use it, if you're a mom to do homework, or if you're me to plan your trip. I was in the US recently, had a day in Phoenix, and I was like, give me the sites to see. So it's everything, right? It could be somebody like me wanting an itinerary. It's somebody else trying to figure out, what they should do for their farming schedule or whatever. But that's where we want to go with Meta AI, which is democratizing access to AI. And that's our plan. So we really think of it as, we have this platform, what do we do with it? And how do we democratize access to people? So everything else that I talked about, agentic, agents, creative tools for users, for advertisers, for creators, all of that, is in the umbrella of what we do on AI on our platform.
Do you think in India we need to be investing a lot more in data centers? Because we had a conversation earlier here on this stage with Mr. Gurnani where he said that's where the investment needs to go. More importantly, in upskilling and reskilling a lot of the existing workforce. Is that, because the conversation on is AI going to take my job is just stale now, right? Do you think that's where the investment needs to go?
And we have Minister Kharge who will come and speak more about the opportunities in Bangalore right after me. But and AI will enable a lot of that. I actually think, if you think about it, there's 420,000 professionals in AI today,
that's right,
growing at 15%, right? That's huge. And in fact, if you see GitHub code contributions, India ranks, I think, high up in terms of contributions that we make. So I already think there's a lot of AI talent. What we are doing on the upskilling and reskilling part, and you're absolutely right, we've also done some work with the Karnataka government, but we do work with the Andhra and Telangana governments around citizen services, around skilling. We just launched something with AICTE on skilling. We've set up a center of, education with IIT Jodhpur, which is focused on AI education. So we take this seriously because we do think upskilling and reskilling will be India's answer as well, and we need to do that as jobs evolve. So that's something we're focused on, but I think that's an opportunity for all of us, right? We're all upskilling and reskilling ourselves in this AI age.
That is an opportunity for all of us. It's been a great opportunity sitting with you and with this lovely audience. Thank you for being so candid, so insightful, and thank you for being an awesome audience as well. A huge round of applause for Sandhya Devanathan.
Thank you. Thanks, Ayush.